As I went out one morning, it being the month of May, a farmer and his daughter I spied upon me way. The girl sat down quite calmly to the milking of her cow, saying I will and I must get married, for the humour is on me now.
Okay, here I just want to talk briefly about the Irish Citizen Army. Formed in the early stages of the lockout as a workers' defence force. Workers were being attacked by the police, but the incident, I believe, that led to the formation of the army was the Transport Union band was going up Ainger Street, playing its instruments. They were attacked by the cops, who tried to smash the instruments. The next time they went out, they were accompanied by quite a number of union members carrying hurley sticks. So, like, if the cops wanted to try it again, they get a taste their own medicine. After that, a meeting was called. And at that meeting, it was decided that the workers of Dublin needed their own defence force. We're at this particular spot because James Connolly, who ended up being commandant of the Citizen Army, was a member of the number 4 unit, which was based on Capel Street. The number 4 unit of the army took in people who lived in Capel Street, Mary's Abbey here, Dominic Street and Parnell Street. There are about 10 units like that around the city. There were a couple of things that were of note about the Citizen Army. One, you had to be a trade union member to be a member of the army. 2, it was the only organisation in Ireland at the time that engaged in any sort of weaponry or stuff, uniform stuff, that gave full equality to women. In the rest of the nationalist movement, women could roll bandages, or they could hold prayer vigils outside prisons, stuff like that. Citizen Army, women joined on exactly the same basis as the men. Women carried arms. Now, not a huge number took up that offer, because at that time in Ireland, it was considered very unusual, very uppity for a woman really to be involved in anything outside the home. Nevertheless, there were a significant cohort of women who did. People like Dr. Kathleen Lynn, who went on later to found St. Ultan's Children's Hospital. Rosie Hackett, who the Dublin City Council just decided a few days ago to name the new bridge after. Rosie, as well as being an 18-year-old shop steward for the union up in Jacob's Biscuit Factory, where the DIT is now up on Ainger Street. In fact, when she was just 18, she had 3,000 women up there out on strike in support of the male bakers who were looking for better conditions, because the heat in the bakery at the time, when there was no health and safety legislation, was unimaginable. Like, it was quite common on a daily basis for bakers to faint from the heat. The army, the Citizen Army, was trained initially by an interesting character, a guy called Jack White, an ex-British Army captain and Protestant Republican from Brockshane, just outside Ballymena, Ian Paisley's hometown. White, as well as being the first one to give training to the Citizen Army, also, after 1916, after Connolly and the others had been sentenced to death and the executions had started, White was arrested in South Wales. What was he doing there? He'd gone over there to try and get the Welsh miners to go out on strike to try and save Connolly's life. Unfortunately, he was jailed very quickly before he had a chance to visit more than 1 or 2 of the collieries. In the 1930s, Jack was involved in the anti-fascist struggle against the blue shirts in this city when he was a member of the Republican Congress. And in 1936, he carried on the fight against fascism when he went to Spain and he fought with the anarchist CNT militia. He died in 1940, and it's one of the tragedies of this country that his family, being staunchly unionist, were so ashamed of his politics that they destroyed all his papers. So the only stuff we have written by him, apart from a couple of pamphlets, is his autobiography, but only up to the early 20s. What was the role of the main nationalist movement at the time in relation to all this? Like, the Citizen Army wasn't just a workers' defence force, it was also out for Irish independence, for leaving the British Empire. Well, Arthur Griffith, who at the time would have been the foremost nationalist figure in the country, frequently attacked Larkin, calling him the representative of English trade unionism in Ireland. Griffith would constantly proclaim ad nauseum, he never shut up about it, how he had no sympathy for the workers, and he denounced the food ships sent by the British trade unions to avoid starvation in Dublin as, and I quote, a dangerous bribe. He strongly opposed the Save the Kiddies campaign, where English trade unionists had offered to take the children of strikers from Dublin over to their homes for the duration of the dispute so that they could get at least 3 square meals a day. When the children were to leave from Dublin Port, and the parents arrived down there with the children, what do they find? A gang of priests and a rake of the ancient order of Hibernians and the various sodalities from around the city, who physically stopped most of the children getting on the boats. Some did manage to make it. Some also managed to get to homes in Belfast, but the bulk of them were stopped. The Catholic Bishop of Dublin at the time praised this, said there should be more of it, and also said, and again a very interesting thing, it wasn't only that he was worried about their faith, going to these awful English homes, which could have socialists in them, or maybe even Protestants. No, it was also that it would be very bad if those children got used to having 3 meals a day, that they'd be very discontented when they came back to Dublin. Witness statements in Ireland's Bureau of Military History by various people who were in the Irish Volunteers in 1913 and early 14 are probably indicative of the general feeling in the nationalist movement. While some of the more advanced nationalists like Pearse and Clark were sympathetic to the workers, the bulk were not. They were opposed. They saw it as the labour struggle as some sort of diversion from the national struggle, and being led in the main by quite wealthy people like John Dillon. Well, not John Dillon, he was on the more peaceful end of things, but there were quite a number of wealthy people at the top, and they basically didn't like workers getting more money. Like, higher wages meant lower profits. That rankles with them. What comes out from the statements that are available, and I would emphasise, they're only from a selection of people who served. Not everybody who served at that time or later in the War of Independence gave statements to the Bureau of Military History. But those that are there are probably indicative of the general feeling, and they are quite hostile to Larkin, and they're also quite hostile to what they saw as his internationalism, and particularly the aid that was coming from British workers. And just to finish up on the Citizen Army, anyone here, like from around here, from Stoneybatter or Smithfield, we have located so far the houses where 7 Citizen Army members from our own locality lived. If there's anyone here from Ashford Street, well, there was a guy called James Burton who lived at number 37. Down on Arran Quay, there was Thomas Cade in number 11 and William Walsh in 27. Over on North King Street, beside the Cobblestone pub, there was Richard Lawrence. And on Ben Burb Street, there were 3 Citizen Army members: Felix O'Reilly in number 18, Larry Keegan in 72, and John Keegan, presumably a relative of his, 4 doors up, in 76. And I would think that anybody who's living within about 3 miles of Seaside, because beyond that, most of the suburbs that are there now didn't really exist at the time, but within about 3 miles of Seaside, you would probably find that there was somebody from the Citizen Army living very close to yourself. We're now just going to ramble up to the market.